Hello, Ali. We have actually met each other in passing, literally in passing, because I used to have an office in St Martin's within Ludgate, and you, of course, used to chair and still do chair the Shine group, which
That's
always
right.
met in the office down the corridor. But now
Yes,
it's
I
nice
have
to have
tiptoed past you on many an occasion.
yeah, but never really had a proper conversation.
No.
No. So anyway, it's very nice to meet you, and
You.
I think your roots are in Scotland, in Aberdeen, and that's interesting to me because one of my daughters-in-law is from Aberdeen. So tell us, after Aberdeen, where did you go on in terms of education? Were you still in Scotland, or?
Okay, so when I was at school, my dream, my mecca was always Edinburgh. I loved Edinburgh very much. It was the only university I wanted to go to. I think in those days it might have been a bit easier to get into Edinburgh, I'm sure, but I did get in anyway. And I studied English language and literature there. I was there for 4 years and came out with my degree at the end of that. Not actually knowing what I wanted to do at that point. And then, yes, my friends all went to London, and I thought I will never go to England. And then, of course, I did. So, and I worked for a year or so, just as in sort of secretarial jobs, and suddenly thought, actually, I'd quite like to be a teacher. So I did my PGCE at Oxford University. And I did a year at Oriel College doing that, which was a fantastic course. I was a little bit of an inverted snob. I was quite bemused coming down from Scotland at undergraduates, and particularly in Oriel College, sort of groups running out, sort of jumping over burning boats, and it was all very peculiar to me, but it was a marvelous course, and I loved Oxford, but I was quite bemused by it.
So then, once you finished your degree and your PGCE, did you go on to do some teaching?
I did indeed. So I learned to be an English teacher, a secondary school English teacher, and strangely enough, my first and only teaching job was at Crownwood School, as it originally was in Eltham. So before it was the Stationers Crownwoods Academy, and before it was razed to the ground and rebuilt, I was teaching there for 3 years, and then I carried on teaching for another 2 years as a supply teacher when I started studying bookbinding. So
that's a marvelous coincidence with Stationers, isn't it? Really,
it's extraordinary.
Yes, it's amazing. And as a former old boy of the earlier Stationers Company's school, I know many of my friends who are also there are delighted with the fact that we now have another school associated. So you were teaching, but then thereafter you got rather sort of taken off in another direction. How did that come about?
Well, I actually really enjoy teaching. I think it's almost like a national service thing. I think everyone should do it for a couple of years, because dealing with teenagers is a really good kind of grounding experience. And actually, I love my subject. I always have loved English literature, but I kind of thought, both my parents were teachers, and I sort of thought to myself, actually, I'm not sure I want to do this forever. So I was still young enough to kind of think, maybe I can change direction. And I wanted to learn to use my hands. I'd done a little sort of evening class in carpentry, and I thought, that's too big. I don't really know that's the thing. And so I handed in my notice, and I saved up some money, and I went to the States for a few months and had a little travel around, which I'd never done. I had not had a gap year or anything. And whilst I was in California, I met an English chap, very, very flamboyant bookbinder. And he had been in London College of Printing. He'd done his training there, and he said, "Oh, darling, be a bookbinder." So so that's what I did. I did what I was told, and I came back and I applied to London College of Printing, and I got in and started my HND, and I absolutely loved it. It was a complete revelation.
But now you're with a rather well-known firm of bookbinders, Shepherd's, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So I was really lucky. Whilst I was at LCP, I needed to pay my way because I'd already done so many university, further education courses, and as well as the supply teaching, I got a Saturday job at Shepherd's Bookbinders. And after I actually, just as an interesting anecdote, my third job was as a personal secretary to Mr. Bean, and I used to send out Mr. Bean photographs. It was just one day a week, but yes, I started here as a Saturday shop girl, and once I'd finished my course, Rob Shepherd offered me a job in the bindery, and I've been here ever since. So that's a long time. That's 26 years now.
And rather fascinatingly, the person I spoke to last week also took up bookbinding rather later on in his career than you did. I mean, in his retirement, in fact.
Yeah.
So tell me, was it being in the realm of bookbinding that brought you to stationers?
Yes, so actually, my managing director, Rob Shepherd, he was a stationer, and I was aware of him going to meetings at the stationers, and sort of, I think he may have taken me to an evening once, and I was sort of interested. I was quite intrigued by this body that I knew nothing about the guilds or the worshipful companies, and so then Rob said, "Well, look, I think you should become a freeman," and so I did, very luckily. It was very nice, and then sort of, I can't actually remember how I became a liveryman, but it sort of happened. I know that there are protocols for this, but I don't quite remember. But I remember the ceremony, and I started sitting on the Shine Committee to take his place because he went on to court, and of course, with my educational background, I found it fascinating, the school magazine competition. And I also went to quite a few young stationers, although I don't think I was quite young enough. I went to quite a few young stationers events, and I came to some Christmas lunches, and I loved meeting people that I would never otherwise have met.
Well, that's part of what it's about. Can you perhaps you could say a little bit about Shine, because not all stationers will know exactly what it does and what it's for.
Yes, so the Shine competition, Shine School Media Awards, is a school magazine competition, and it's for school magazines that are entirely run by the pupils. So the content and the putting together of the magazine is all run by the pupils. And it exists to encourage those school children to excel at not just at journalism, but the work they put into getting a magazine printed, if it is a printed magazine, the print and design. I mean, the design is a big prize of the awards, and it's really amazing, the talent out there. We would not know otherwise that it was there if it wasn't for something like the competition. And of course, we try and keep in touch with our alumni too, because this is a way of getting new blood into the stationers, because that's what the stationers is about, content and communications. And so each year we run this competition it's nationwide, and it's for secondary school pupils. And then the shortlisted schools and individuals are invited to a ceremony in the end of June, generally, at Stationers Hall, which is a big sort of gala. We have workshops, we have a lunch, and they all sit down on these long benches in the Stationers Hall, and then we have a stage with usually some sort of, somebody like Professor Simon Heffer handing out the awards. It's a really lovely.
It all sounds like, what with the benches and so on, it all sounds slightly medieval. It's rather good. It picks up the sort of tradition of stations. But this year's been a very strange year. How have you coped
Yes.
with the lockdown and Shine?
Yes, well, we decided very, in March, when it was all looking like everything was going to shut down, which it did, of course. We thought, well, actually, we can go ahead with this. And then Richard, who's the deputy chairman, he said, well, I've been having quite a few sort of events which involve a lot of people, and we thought, why don't we just have a ceremony on Zoom? Well, that was our initial thought. We'll run the competition. There's no reason why it can't go ahead. And for those schools who hadn't managed to get a printed magazine together, we said, we'll have the PDF files. That's fine. We can look at them digitally. And actually, most schools who entered did submit a digital version of their magazine. We had a few hard copies. And then actually, we couldn't do the whole ceremony. We wanted to invite schools and children to take part in the ceremony on Zoom. But because of security reasons, the children are not allowed to, they're not allowed to be in their bedrooms. They've got to be accompanied. There were lots of GDPR concerns. So we thought, well, we'll make the announcements on a Zoom ceremony. That's simpler, and then we'll have that made into a little video like this, and they'll be able to access that video and get the results on the day that we've announced them. So that's what we did.
And those announcements have now been made.
Yes, so at the end of June, we made that little film, and we put it on the Shine website that very day. And I think we had 330 hits on that the same day, which is more than we've ever had, actually. It was extraordinarily successful, more than we could have hoped for. And we kind of cobbled it together, but it worked.
Well, perhaps that's where I should just be saying to you, congratulations on an achievement, not just this year, but particularly this year, in the light of everything. Ali, thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting to hear the way things have gone and the variety of things you've done and what you contribute to stations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very nice to talk.